self-checked. Something's wrong. Make sure you go to a private hospital. Make sure you even maybe go to a religious hospital that's not busy celebrating abortions. Get yourself checked. It is the lies and the forced parroting of those lies that make revolutionaries like Bernie Sanders evil and dangerous. You know, for a long time, we thought we knew what a Marxist was. We thought we knew what a Marxist looked like. I've spent a lot of time pointing out Marxists. I spent a lot of time pointing to Barack Obama and saying, look at the Marxist in the White House. But you know what? I thought I knew what cultural and political Marxism really was, because the signals were all there. Nationalizing medicine? Yeah, check. Hostility toward God and the rights granted to him, to every man? Yep, check. War on guns? Yep, check. So we figured we had a Marxist. But here's what I had wrong. Obama didn't have the bloodlust of a Marxist revolutionary. He was greedy. He wanted money. He became a progressive Democrat who liked Marx, and he surrounded himself with Hillary Clinton's team. That's not a Marxist revolutionary. Bernie Sanders is. Bernie Sanders hates the Democratic Party. He loves Karl Marx. He hates America, but he loves the Soviet Union. He hates the individual, unique human beings and loves the false utopia of equality for all. He hates capitalism, but he loves breadlines. He actually said breadlines are good because everybody is standing in them. Nobody has food. He hates the fact that millionaires, which he is one, get special treatment. He hates billionaires, except for Fidel Castro, who at the time of his death had $9 billion squirreled away. Bernie is a revolutionary. He is not a progressive Democrat, and certainly not just a Democrat. He's a Marxist revolutionary whose thirst for social justice and equality is all-consuming. His goal isn't to amend the Constitution, it is to destroy it utterly. It must be, because his political and moral philosophy, socialism, is completely at odds with our Constitution's subordination of the state to the natural rights of you. The Constitution details the things that government is never allowed to do, because you take those actions and you violate the rights of the individual and replace the author of those rights, God himself, with government. No matter what the problem is in society, our rights are sacred and can never be violated. But Bernie's philosophy is the opposite of that. The rights of the individual don't matter. Only the needs of the collective have to be served above all, and the collective is represented and embodied in a central state, headed by a people's committee. So they get to throw the word democracy around from time to time. But their goal is to discover and serve the needs of the state, not you, not me, the group as a whole. You can tell by the people he surrounds himself with. Have you looked at that? The self-proclaimed communists, the founders and leaders of Antifa, Black Lives Matter, Occupy Wall Street, the new SDS, the modern versions of the Weather Underground terrorist organization are all on his campaign staff. These are not grassroots groups of Democrats. They are Marxist revolutionaries who believe in nothing short of the complete overthrow of the United States and destruction of the Constitution and the free market system. And please, let us stop calling them Bernie Bros, because they are not my brother. They are not something that is funny. They are Bernie Bolsheviks. They are Bernie brown shirts. That's what they are. And their revolution will result in death and misery. Another Holodomor, or another Holocaust, or whatever we call the next great socialist atrocity. This fight is not new. The world has been here before. People like you and me have been battling this for generations. Our fathers and grandfathers, they fought the socialists in Germany and the communists in Russia. World War II. But in a way, they kind of had it easy. I mean, in their time, the bad guys wore black US or SS uniforms made by Hugo Boss and had little funny mustaches. But our bad guys come off just as crotchety humanity professors, whining about class warfare and how crappy white people treated the Native Americans. We have to stop pretending that socialism and its modern prophets are innocent or comedic or sideshows or just another choice. And the ghosts of over 100 million dead victims of Marxist ideology cry out to us in this generation from their blood-soaked graves to remind us this isn't a joke. This is the fight of our lives. This time it's our turn. Today is our day. Today is the time. This, as Reagan said, is our point of choosing. We are called upon to carry the cross, dare I say it, of freedom and liberty for one another, for our friends and our neighbors and our kids and our grandkids, for every person that we've never even met before who has lived without the blessing of liberty, and for the future generations here and in Venezuela and everywhere else who deserve freedom. Make no mistake, we are at war, and may it forever remain a Cold War. But it is a war that has been going on for a long time, and the next enemy wave is right here at our gates. They are inside of our gates. And no matter how the media spins this, they're not harmless, grumpy grandpas. They're not. They're armed with pipe bombs, Molotov cocktails, and guns. They are here for revolution. The one of their professors has been telling them is just around the corner. They believe it. They may be armed with rocks and bombs and guns, but we must arm ourselves with the most effective weapon mankind has in its arsenal: courage and truth. Because I am a capitalist, let me just remind you that my new book, Arguing with Socialists, comes out April 7th. Not hard to find the truth today. Also on July 4th, I ask for you and your family to join me in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania for Restoring the Covenant. We must renew our promise to God and ask Him to heal our hearts, our relationships, and our land. This is His land, and He will have a righteous and humble people. I ask you to join us and gather to restore the covenant made by the Pilgrims, George Washington, and finally Abraham Lincoln, and celebrate the facts that actually built this nation. Let us gather together this Independence Day and celebrate the Independence Day of all mankind and strengthen ourselves, find ourselves, recognize that we now must be warriors rising in our might to burst forward in righteousness and to do battle with the enemies, not of mine, not of yours, but the enemies of God Himself. Let us take a stand against those who believe a human life has no value, that the only system, the state, the collective, is the only thing that matters. I tell you today, and I ask you to say the same thing, I will not go over the cliff with the rest of society. Truth is truth, Bernie Sanders. Men cannot have babies. 2 and 2 will always equal 4. Sweden is a free market system that has less regulation than the United States of America by far. Fidel Castro was, and will always be a mass murderer. And no matter how many after-school reading programs he introduced, he will always be a bloodthirsty killer first and foremost. The truth is that America, even at our historic worst, will always be better than the Soviet state was, even with their beautiful chandeliers in the subways. Always. And frankly, Bernie, America will always choose the man who will protect and defend the Constitution of the United States of America. The man who will stand up and protect the free market, not because of wealth, but because of the individual. America will always choose the individual who will stand up for our right to defend ourselves, our religious liberty. A man who loves the country, not hates it, will choose that every time if we simply remember who we are and stand up and realize that socialism and communism build evil empires every single time. Then yes, Democrats, even Donald Trump will kick your ass every single day of the week, and twice on Election Day. It's not that hard. Here's the thing, it's time for us to pay the price of freedom and liberty. The one previously paid by our founders who risked everything for the blessings of liberty, not just for themselves, but for everybody. Whatever you learned and saw this week at CPAC, however you were inspired here in the last few days and yet today, let this be our pledge to each other as we say goodbye at the end of the day and go home to our families and our jobs. Let us recognize the fight that we're actually in and the nature and the scope of our enemy's resolve. Let us recognize that we are the party and the people who protect minorities because we are the party of and for human beings and human life. Let us always be, as we always have been, the people of liberty. Let this today be our solemn vow and oath. We owe it to one another and the future to pay the great debt we owe to those who came before us, the duty we owe to pass this legacy that liberty and justice shall not perish from this earth. I was asked today to come and wake you up. I would ask that you would all stand. I want to do something a little unconventional. I would like you to stand and raise your right hand to the square. I'm not going to ask you to repeat after me. I'm going to ask you to say the words with me. And if you can't do that, you must recognize that you cannot fight, you cannot defend, because you don't fully know or understand. It hasn't been written and etched on your heart yet. And you will be of no use. Together, let us declare that we are awake, and together we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. And among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And in support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Amen.
Hey, you guys just wanted to get here early for my boss, right? For the president. I get it, but not too shabby. Glenn Beck to warm the crowd up. God bless you all. God bless you all. Thanks for being here. I'm going to do something a little bit different. Can I ask you guys a question? Why is it that when everybody sees me now, the first thing they say is, they ask me a question about whether I kick the backside of somebody who likes tearing up presidential speeches? What's all that about? We're the good guys. We don't do that kind of stuff. Did you see that California congressman yesterday, Garamendi, threatening violence against Don Jr.? Unbelievable. But hey, I know Don, and my money's on Don. But we don't do that. We don't have an Antifa. The left does. That's who they are. They're normalizing violence. Think about this. I love all those red hats. In some parts of this nation, to put on a hat that says, "Make our country great again," makes you a target. Just internalize that. What does that mean about the nation we live in? It means that the left has become extreme. Yesterday, was it yesterday or the day before, Charlie Kirk made some news. He made some headlines. Why? Because he said, guess what? We could have a socialist president. We could. He's right. America needs to wake up. America needs to understand the reality of the threat that this November could come to fruition. I'm going to do something a little bit different today. I'm a national security guy. I have a national radio show called America First. Thank you. And Jesse Waters calls me the scariest guy on TV. He said if he ever got a tattoo, it would be Dr. G. Thank you, Jesse. But I'm not going to talk about ISIS. Do you even remember ISIS? What happened to that? I'll tell you what happened. Donald Trump, the commander-in-chief, happened. But I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not even going to talk about my time in the White House. A glorious, glorious period. The high point of my career as Deputy Assistant for Strategy to the 45th President of the United States. What an incredible, incredible 3.5 years. Unbelievable. But I'm going to do something a little bit different today, because I think there's only two people who've addressed this audience. I think the only other person is my buddy, Nigel Farage. There's only two people of all the incredible speakers who've addressed you who've actually lived in a system with socialized medicine. It's only me and Nigel. And I want to talk to you about not the 100 million people who died as a result of communism and socialism in the last century. I want to talk to you about what's going to happen if Bernie Sanders or any other socialist becomes president. Here's the reality. I grew up in the UK. In the UK, there's something called the NHS. The government runs healthcare. The government, like the DMV, like the VA. Think about the DMV running your healthcare. My best buddy in the UK had to get an MRI just a few months ago. He had to wait 6 weeks. I just had this accident, and you should see the other guys. And I got an MRI stat like that. Why? Because we're free here. We are free people. The greatest nation on God's earth has the greatest medical care. But, didn't Bernie have a heart attack? Did he go to Venezuela to get treatment? Did he go to Cuba or Canada? Did he go to Canada? Of course he didn't. He got treated here. Why? Because he wanted to live. That's why. But let me tell you a personal story. Let me tell you two stories. So after the fall of communism, I went to live in the land of my parents. I moved to Hungary, and I lived there for 15 years. Met my beautiful wife, Katie, there, and we started a family. My first daughter, my first child, my daughter was born in Hungary. And Hungary had just come out of communism and had socialized medicine. The government ran medicine. We were advised to have our baby be born under the guidance, the advice, the care of one of the best obstetricians, gynecologists in the country. Lehel, if you're listening, we miss you. But before that happened, he told us, by the way, when you come to the hospital, one of the fanciest state hospitals, please bring 3 things. Will you bring toilet paper for yourselves? And will you bring for me and my team? And I swear on the Bible, he said this. Will you bring me soap, and if you can find it, surgical gloves? Please, because it's hard to find them. I'm going to find the sutures myself, but can you bring surgical gloves? Think about that. In a free Hungary with socialized medicine, a doctor like Lehel, one of the best in the country, was earning $350 a month. How do you survive as a surgeon, as a doctor, as an obstetrician? Because Hungary has a system called hálópénz, which means gratitude money. Basically, it's tipping. And there's an informal chart that everybody knows about how much cash the patient gives the doctor in gratitude before the operation. Knee surgery was $200. Birth of a child starts about $1,000. So think about that. You're being taxed to the hilt to pay for this free national health service. But if you want good service, as opposed to waiting in a line with everybody else, you better have a big stack of cash to give to the doctor. Do you want that? Because that's socialism. I can talk to you for hours about what my parents went through under a socialist system. My father arrested, tortured by the secret police, put in prison with a life sentence at the age of 20. I can talk to you about the marks on his body that I realized as a child weren't wrinkles because he was too young. Those were the scars of where the secret police had bound his hands together with wire behind his back so they could hang him from the ceiling of the torture chamber. I could go on and on and on. But in America, it's hard to relate unless you're the kid of somebody like that. If you're born in the freest nation in God's earth, it's hard to believe that. I chose this country. I'm a legal immigrant. And my challenge to every single candidate, whoever wins, Bernie might get the nomination, they may steal it from him again with the superdelegates. But I challenge all of them. I challenge Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I challenge Senator Pocahontas. I challenge all Democrats. Find me one immigrant to this country who escaped socialism, who says, I want to go back. Just one. I don't care whether it's North Korea. I don't care whether it's Cuba. Ask them. There's not one person who's escaped socialism who wants to go back or wants it here. And here's the second story. I'm an only child, and I loved my parents. I had a very close relationship with my mother and my father. I was treated as an adult from the age of 6. I dearly loved them. They'd moved back to Hungary with me. And my mother had an accident. She hurt, we think probably cracked her hip, but we never know. And finally, we managed to convince her, you need to go to the hospital. So we called the ambulance service. Here's the first thing. The ambulance service, she lived in an apartment that was on the 2nd floor. The ambulance got there, and she could barely walk. And the ambulance service didn't have a gurney that could fold and be taken up the stairs. So it took us about 40 minutes for us, with 2 big guys, to get her down each step. Just maybe 20 steps, 40 minutes, in excruciating pain. That's nationalized healthcare. We got her to the best hospital in Budapest, and she was there for 6 days. She died on the 7th. I didn't get to say goodbye to her, but my wife visited her the day before she died. And she was in a ward with about 5 other patients. And she said, it's really hot in here. It's really humid. They've opened the windows, but I find it hard to breathe, Katie. There was no blood oxygen monitor on her finger. There was no thermostat to change the temperature in the room. So that night, my mother, at the age of 64, had a pulmonary embolism and died. And the next time I got to see her was in the morgue, where the technician said, you do know you're not allowed to touch the body, okay? That's our rule. And I said I didn't care. So I walked up to my dead mother's body, and I kissed her goodbye. In America, people don't die of pulmonary embolisms. If they do, it's a fluke, but not in a hospital. They just don't. Why? Because we have freedom, because we have a free market, because we have the best health system in the world. So I have a request to you. You're the good guys. You're my team. You're on Team Trump. God bless you all. You're the base. But in the next 240 days, we got a challenge. We got to win over the people who aren't on Team Trump. The reasonable people, reasonable Democrats. Up to 25% of the people going to the president's rallies are Democrats. That's incredible, incredible. And I want you to tell them something very simple. In a choice between Bernie Sanders and President Donald Trump, my old boss, there's only one choice. There's only President Trump. Why? Why? Because if Bernie Sanders or any other socialist is president, you will have no choices. It's that simple. Whether it's healthcare or anything else, you will have no choices. So do the work of God. We are reclaiming our nation. We are rededicating it to the founding principles that God handed down, that are enshrined in our founding documents. We are happy warriors, but let's make this tent as big as possible. And for the next 240 days, because it is a war for the soul of our nation, I want you to send that message. In a choice between Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump, there's only one choice, because otherwise you won't have any choices. So, one last request every day, every morning, every night. Please say a prayer for the president. Say a prayer for the first family, because we need to win this one. And people got a little bit perturbed last year about what I said about AOC and the Green New Deal. But it's okay, because I'm off to get in my gasoline-powered Mustang and to have a cheeseburger. Get your Trump on. God bless you.